Hello and welcome to In the Light Growing Your Soul with me, Anna Isabel. I'm a psychological astrologer and an analytical hypnotherapist. And I'm so excited because today I'm going to be covering a topic that fascinates me. And my guest to do that is Dawn Brunke. Hello, Dawn.
Hi, nice to see you again. Thank you for having
Yeah,
me.
the last time we were talking about your book, Shadow Animals, and I
Right.
love conversation, and then discovered that you are one of this wonderful rare breed of people who's an animal communicator. And you've written this marvelous book called Animal Voices. And it is marvelous. And I
Oh,
think,
thank
firstly, I maybe, the introduction, I loved the introduction because it's about your journey into animal communication.
you.
So maybe we should start there. How did you discover this and how did you get started?
Okay, yeah. Well, it was a very roundabout route, and I had moved from Wisconsin, where I was born, to Alaska, which is pretty much cross country. And a long story there, but the short version is that I got a job as the editor of a health and wellness magazine here in Alaska. And one of the first articles I read from the box of articles to go over was written by a woman in Anchorage who talked to animals. And I thought, Hmm, that's interesting. It fascinated me. And I was impressed by the article because it was very matter of fact, very kind of well grounded. And I eventually interviewed this woman. I found her really a wonderful woman, again, very grounded person. She had the opinion everybody can do this. It's just something, we don't emphasize in our culture. And she turned me on to an author named J. Allen Boone, who wrote a beautiful little book back in the 1950s called Kinship with All Life. And, being an author, I really related to Boone, and he kind of became my, spiritual mentor through a lot of this. And he had a relationship with a German Shepherd, had been a war dog in Germany and then came to Hollywood and was a movie star. And that's how he learned animal communication. So anyway, that's kind of simmering in the back of my brain. I'm reading all of his books. And the woman that had written the article told me, well, there's people that do this, all over the US. And I thought, really? What kind of job is that, right? You're talking to animals. And I ended up interviewing them. And again, probably about 2 dozen of them. I was very impressed. Again, just by their centeredness, their anchoredness. This wasn't an airy fairy thing. And they came from a lot of diverse backgrounds: lawyer, a high school biology teacher, a psychotherapist, an artist. So they all had these fascinating stories about their connection to animals. And I would always ask, well, how does it work? My left brain just didn't grok how that really worked. And but I heard these stories over and over, 24 of them, right? So one day I'm working on my book. These interviews kind of morphed into this book, which is my first book you just showed, Animal Voices. So I was working on the book. I was in a very meditative state of mind, kind of when you're in good writing, or good art, you're in that space, in that zone. And a number of birds flew to my window. It's just right over there. And I don't know why, but I put my hands on my heart and I walked over to the window and I just said, "Greetings, little birds," which is something I ordinarily would not do. I'm just not that kind of person. Nothing wrong with it, but it's just not me. But when I said that, I heard the birds in my head. It wasn't like a voice from out there. It was a thought. It was a thought-based communication. But what was fascinating to me was thoughts were qualitatively different than my own. I knew it was another presence that was connecting with me and talking via thought. And then everything the communicators had told me made sense. I was like, okay. But let me tell you, having, hearing about it from other people and then actually experiencing it is a different thing. And it shocked me. It shocked my system. And it took me a couple of days to kind of to integrate that and to make sense of it and to really, pull it into my body. And it changed my life, really, because if we can talk to animals, what would they tell us? Your world just goes right. And so that began me on my path of talking to as many animals as I could, my dogs, my fish, the moose outside, anybody, any animal who'd be willing to talk, I would talk to and take notes. And I went through that whole process. And then eventually I started doing it for other people, for friends, did practice sessions, and then became one of those crazy animal communicators, right? Yeah.
I love it. I love that it just began to happen for you.
Mhm.
You didn't start, you didn't. So, okay, are you able to be more specific about how it works? Because you said a thought came into your head that was
Mhm.
qualitatively different from yours.
Right.
And those of us who work on spirit connection through meditation, mediumship, we all struggle with this. How do we know that it's not me and my imagination? How do
Right.
I know this is real? So, what process did you go through to work out that this was real?
Okay. So there's kind of two questions there. The first being, how does it work? And what I've learned over 2 decades is that it works a little differently for each individual. I think because I'm a writer, I'm a word person, I often get communications from animals in words and sentences. It just, my brain just translates it that way. Other people get feelings, they just feel it. Some people kind of get this gestalt. They just know what's happening. Some people very visual get little movies, or they see things from the perspective of the animal. So there's all types of different ways of getting this. And I think personally, I get a combination. I think I tend to emphasize the words, but I get it in different ways. Sometimes when when a person is coming to me with, my animal's not feeling well, I can feel that in my body. And then I can relate, I can go into that and I can share that information. So that's number one question. Number two question, how do we know it's real? That's the $1 million question, isn't it? And I wish I had a great a great magic bullet answer, but I think the real answer is that it takes time. And you get confirmations, by finding things out for somebody that you couldn't have known. And you have to kind of prove it to yourself over and over and over and over, right? I mean, and I have 1,000,001 experiences of things I just couldn't have known. And then the person says, yeah, that's exactly right. And sometimes it's exact phrases, which is really amazing to me, where I'll get this exact phrase, has nothing to do with the session whatsoever. And the person is like, oh, and then you just see it. You just see it like, I know you're the real deal. And that confirms to me, what I felt about my animal, right? So oftentimes it's a healing process with the other human involved, Yeah.
I I would love this. I would love to be able to do this. As it is, I'm always talking to animals anyway. Um, I don't know that I've ever passed a cat that I didn't say hello to. And when I'm on my allotment, and I often get robins landing right next to me, I always talk to them. I'm always talking to everything. I talk to my plants. So if they could talk back to me, can you imagine how excited I'd be?
Yeah. Well, and they can, and they can.
I should
It's just,
say, I
you
bet
know,
they are talking back to me. I haven't yet learned how to hear them, because I am paying attention, but I haven't quite tuned in. So, how do we begin to tune in?
okay. So my general answer, and it might be a little different for you because you strike me as a very empathic person, so very sensitive. So for you, it might simply be deepening into feeling and trusting that, not, like I said, not everybody gets words, not everybody gets their inner movies, but my more general answer for people listening to this is, you need to take some good breaths. You need to sink into yourself, into your center. And really, I mean, if you have a background in meditation or something like that, I think that helps, because this really is about going to our deeper self. and speaking from that level. We're not speaking on the superficial level. Hi, little plant, how's your day? No, this is about sinking down, perhaps feeling the plant, feeling its roots, feeling how it moves, and plants speak differently to us than animals do. Mountains, you can connect with anything, right? Mountains, clouds, right? Whatever. Um, and so it's a I think for some people it's difficult only because we're so chattery in our minds. We're so much going on here. We're so kind of judgmental about ourselves. We go in with, is this real? Can this even be real? We have all these so it's really getting rid of the static, sinking down into the self, spending some time there. I really think the more comfortable you are with your deep self, the much easier this is to do. Yeah.
Mm. It's really about opening something within ourselves, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is.
And I think it's interesting because you said right at the start, didn't you, that you were already in a kind of meditative state because you were writing. So
Yeah.
you were in your right brain, if we can put it like that,
Yeah.
because you were in that creative writing, open mind space, and then suddenly something happened.
Yeah.
For a start, you did something that you said was uncharacteristic.
Mhm.
You got up and
Yeah.
you went over to talk to them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that already shows that something was going on there. And it wasn't a conscious decision. You
Right.
just stopped doing it. Because if it had been conscious, you probably wouldn't have done it.
Yeah. And it never really occurred to me while I was interviewing these people. I thought, oh, this would be so interesting to do. But in a weird way, it never occurred to me that I would ever do it. I felt like I was a journalist. I was, sussing out the information and the good little secrets and stuff. But yeah, so yeah, it did just kind of uh, come unexpected, and it was a flow. We all get openings like that, don't we, though? We all get intuitive nudges and spaces where we're very calm, and we can choose to accept that invitation. The birds come. What do you do?
What do birds talk about?
Well, so many different things. We have ravens here in Alaska. I love talking to the ravens, and they're different. And different. We should also say this: different animals are different. Different. You see that especially with dogs and cats. Very different personalities, and they relate to us in different ways. Well, think of how many species of birds there are. There's so many different ones. So, just to give you an example, ravens. They're very clever, and yet they're so fun loving. They love to play on the thermals, and they like to congregate in our grocery store kind of up high. If you were afraid of birds, it might seem menacing because they're kind of looking down at you, right? But I think they're amazing, and they come down sometimes to get food or garbage or whatever, and jump around. So those birds are primarily looking for food. They're looking for opportunity. That's their focus. They don't really want to chat. The thermal guys, when they're in that mode, it's a meditative thing, it's play. And so they're much more open to kind of almost allowing you to be present with them and to soar with them, to feel that. I get more feelings there rather than words. And from there, it's just a step to kind of spirit of raven. And you can open to this allness of what raven as a species, and you get this great wisdom and again, the playfulness. They're almost like a little bit of a trickster joker, they just have that kind of personality, or I feel like raven as a species has that. Um, and so there's so much, where is your consciousness at, and what are you interested in? And that's where you can focus in. Yeah.
You talk about raven wisdom.
Hmm.
What wisdom do ravens have?
Well, it's so vast, right? I mean, raven wisdom is pretty ancient. And we do know of cultures and people who have interacted with ravens. And even in the Norse god, oh, what's his name? Odin. Is it Odin? Yeah, who
Yeah.
has the two ravens, and the two ravens go out and they see for him, and then they bring back wisdom to him. And I think ravens are in many ways like that, messenger birds. And I think if we're really connected with raven, if raven is your your spirit animal or your totem animal, you know, there is a sense of messages and being able to move not only in space but in time and bring back wisdom. And again, I think that the question is also tied to where is our consciousness, you know? So the wisdom that Raven might give me is different than the wisdom somebody else might, because of our different interests and where we are in our spiritual evolution, right? So, but you can, you know, just, I think you can get really far with Raven. I think that's good. It's a really powerful spirit animal to have. Yeah.
So what I'm understanding is that you can connect to the individual animal, and maybe that might be perhaps a more mundane conversation about what they're feeling and what they're wanting in that moment. And then there's the ability to connect with the essence of the species,
Mhm.
or perhaps we could say the spirit of the
Mhm.
species. And from that comes something that we might associate with animal guides or human guides, spirit guides.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a spectrum, you know, just like we are, right? We can be talking in a superficial way with our friends and laughing and, you know, just being goofy, but we can also get into some really deep conversations, right? So it's where are you on that spectrum? And I think animals are the same way. In my experience, animals are a little bit more open to that, a little more fluid on the spectrum. So I could be talking to an individual dog, and let's say this first is that, you know, individual animals are like individual people. Some are what I call doggy dogs, and they're just interested in eating and playing and da 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 da. That's their little world, right? Other dogs are little philosophers or little scientists, you know, and they have completely different ways of seeing the world. To me, they're a little more fun just because you can expand with them, you know, and they open up and they can fluidly take you kind of to as a stepping stone almost to like what we might call spirit of dog, or I differentiate between the species of dog and the spirit of dog just a little bit. I mean, we could map this out. We could have probably 100 levels of different, you know, ways we talk to animals. But again, animals, I think in general are very fluid on this. And so you just, if you have a question about something, that individual dog might connect you to species of dog who might connect you to spirit of dog, depending on what's appropriate, huh? Does that make sense?
It does, it does. And I think that our desire to understand animals is so huge that we have begun to teach dogs to speak. And I'm
Mhm.
thinking of those wonderful talking buttons that you could train your dog to teach. And
Right.
there's amazing, amazing work that's been done, giving insight into how dogs are feeling, because they're being taught how to express abstracts like feeling,
Mhm.
which is wonderful. Teddy is seriously not interested in this. I teach him by the time he was 6, and he basically was saying, why are you teaching me to use this to ask you to open the door when you know that when I walk to the door and
Yeah.
go woof,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you come on, stop this. You know, and I know that if I walk over to the door and go woof, you're going to open the door for me. So why this extra step?
Right. Right. Right.
And because he couldn't understand that actually it's not about the opening the door, it's about teaching him a new means of communication that's going to allow him to tell me things that he can't otherwise tell me. So he's not understanding that that's what I'm doing. So we didn't get very far.
But you
Which
know, there's a part of me that's on Teddy's side there because he's just like, hey, you could just learn to talk to me. And then we wouldn't need the mat, right? We wouldn't need
exactly,
all of that
exactly.
intervention.
So but it's wonderful because what it's showing is our desire as human beings to understand what's
Yeah.
going on in people's minds, to
Yeah.
find that way of communicating. So clearly, understanding body language is number one. Understanding their body language is a huge way of already understanding what they want, what they need. They are brilliant at understanding our body language. They've got no problems with that. Then, of course, there's the verbal side where we're teaching them. And Teddy, now 7, really his understanding of English is fantastic. It's very contextualized, and but he also extrapolates out of context. And there are times when we're having conversations and he goes and does something that is incredibly appropriate to a conversation that we are not having with him, but because of something he hears us say. And that's amazing. So we have this level already of language, but the problem is that it's limited because we are different species, and he's never going to be able to articulate in English what he's feeling, what he's thinking. It's just not going to happen. So to do it telepathically is just this bit of magic, isn't it?
Well, I think from some perspectives, it does seem like magic. And from other perspectives, it seems like the most natural thing in the world. You know, you're connecting your energies, you're connecting your heart to heart, mind to mind, and you're just sharing information. It's, you know, it's like the Vulcan mind meld, huh? You know, you're just getting it. So I guess I just don't see it as, it doesn't need to be an obstacle, right? So maybe if we let go of all of the, you know, the tests and the this and the that, and we just kind of soften our heart and soften our mind and open to it, and it comes. I think sometimes we try. I notice this in classes. People try too hard, or they want to know, you know, what should I do? Da, 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 da. It's like sometimes I just say, okay, we're just going to practice it now. You know, we're going to meditate, and you're going to practice. We're going to see how it goes. And inevitably we come back and everybody's smiling, you know, they got it because they just let go of all those words, you know.
It's
The
about
words are
letting it.
helpful to give us structure, but then at a certain point, we just have to let go of those words and move into experience, huh?
It's about allowing it to happen, isn't it?
Yeah,
Instead
it really is. It really is. We have to
allowing
get out of our own way. I mean, you know, the problem in animal communication is ourselves.
It is the problem in everything, you know. Excuse me, a student of mediumship, if I can call myself that. A learning, developing medium is what I am. I know that if I relax, I'm going to do a whole lot better if I just surrender and allow it to happen. So, but when it does happen, I don't know that it's ever going to lose that magic quality. And I think we can say it's the most natural thing in the world because it is. There's certainly no technology involved. It's an innate ability that we have.
Yeah.
But because it's been trained out of us, it's foreign. It's been we have been having this trained out of us for centuries. We've forgotten who we are.
Yeah. Well, I think you're exactly right. It's a profound disconnect that we're dealing with on so many different levels, not just with animals, but our connection with the earth and with each other and everything. Yeah. I had a really interesting dream when I was writing this book, the Animal Voices book. And in it, I was in an animal communication class, which I've actually never taken. I've just been taught by animals, but I was in this animal communication class and people were going on break. And I all of a sudden realized I have a universal translator device in my head. And it's a tiny little thing. It's just like a little round marble that has little dots around it. And I realized if I look to the dogs, boom, it's like a laser beam. I can understand what they're saying. I look to the cows, boom, I can get, and I'm so excited in the dream, right? It's just like, and I go up to the animal communicator teacher and I go, you know, I found this in my dream. Did you put that there? And he just laughs and he goes, no, everybody has one. Everybody has one. You just have to find it, you know? And I love that dream because it speaks to the universal issue of remembering, of simply finding that within ourselves, sensing it, huh? And that's why I said before, you know, when we are anchored and centered, we have more access to those intuitive abilities, and you can find your universal translator device, huh? We all
When
have it.
we do, when Teddy was 2.5, maybe 3, I started to write a book called The Raising of Teddy.
Mm,
And in my heart, I knew what I wanted to do was to help people see that we are one species.
mm,
It's and I think the further along I've come on this path, the more has been included in this one species. It's not just animal life, it's plant life, it's the wind, it's the earth, it's
mm,
everything. We are one species.
mm.
And so if we're one species, it means that we have the innate ability to connect and to
So,
understand. And I'm not even going to say to communicate necessarily, because I I feel that what it is understanding through connection.
mhm.
And then if we're able to do that, wow.
Mhm.
That,
Well, yeah, and I think the word communication actually, the root kind of being commune. We're going to commune with other people. We're going to, and other beings, all beings, and we feel that. And, you know, once you join that, I mean, a number of animals say, you know, that's the universal dance. And once you're there and participating, everything is open to you, right? So yeah, and it is a type of communing, or um, um, what should we call it? What would be a good word for that? You know, we kind of need to come up with a new word of everything's open. Yeah.
maybe you were talking earlier about dogs being very fluid or animals being very fluid.
Mm,
Maybe it's a blending that we're
mm,
talking about,
mhm,
allowing
mhm,
ourselves to be fluid so that we could blend
mhm.
with their energies.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great skill to have, to play with that.
It's a
Yeah.
beautiful skill to have.
Yeah.
So, well, practice for me, I think.
It is practice, but you know, I think it's not so different than mediumship, or you know,
No,
it's really the same basic thing. You have to find your way in, you know, and as I said before, everybody has a little different way in. So, you know, is it feelings? Is it sound or movie? There was there was a woman in one of my classes. She got communication. She was a singer. She got it by song lyrics. She would hear song lyrics, and then she was able to translate what that meant in relation to the animal and the person she was connecting with. So, you know, yeah,
you,
there are many different ways. As so creative as we are, huh?
we are all very creative and
Yeah.
very different. So I'm just going to remind everyone that the book that we have been discussing is called Animal Voices, and this is what it looks like. Um, I think before we end our conversation, what I'd really like is for you to give us an example of a conversation that's stuck in your mind.
Oh, well, there's so
I know you're
many.
going to be so many.
There are really, and they touch you in different ways. I mean, I remember one, and this is what I tell in class often. I went to, this was early on. I went to a farm. A lady had horses, and she wanted me to talk with the horses, and we did. There was a number of horses we did. It was a really nice communication. And the last one was in the barn. He was an older horse named Charlie, a white horse, and very gentle. And I remember putting my hand on his I'm not a horse person, so I don't know what that's called. There, you know, the side of his face. And there was no question really. But what came to me was this image of a black, glossy horse, huge and fast, running past me at the barn. And the message that I heard was, "Midnight says hello." The woman went like this. She goes, "You couldn't have known that." you couldn't have known that. Midnight was my heart horse. And he's the reason I started this farm and had these horses here. And he was Charlie's best friend. He stayed with Charlie the last year of his life. And whenever I come into this barn, well, not whenever, but sometimes when I come to this barn, I feel Midnight is talking to me. But then I think, oh, it's just my imagination. But because you said it, you're confirming that to me, right? So it was a huge gift to her. She had this confirmation. She really is hearing Midnight. And I got a huge confirmation. Yeah, what you're doing is real, right? And so it was one of those really heart-opening, heartfelt moments where there's great healing, huh? There really is.
Fabulous. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I'm looking for.
Okay, there you go.
Of confirmation is exactly what teaches us to trust
Yes,
what
yes.
they're giving. And
Yeah.
it helps those who are listening, the recipients of what we're getting, to trust as well.
Mhm.
So that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Dawn.
Yeah, sure. Wonderful talking with you. Gosh.
And if people want to learn more about your courses and your books, what do they do?
Website is easiest. It's animalvoices.net. Animalvoices.net. And there's a lot of excerpts from my various books. There's information on classes, on sessions. I also do tarot card readings, so there's that. It's all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Wonderful. I am going to make sure that the link to the book and to your previous book and the previous interview we did, as well as your website, are all in the description box. Dawn, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Anna. Lovely. Lovely being with you again.
Thank you all for watching. Next time, well, I haven't quite decided. I have a few options. So you'll just have to join me and see then. Bye-bye.